In the beginning, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, the days were long, silent, and the earth was still young. Nature flourished, but wickedness had started to root itself in the human heart. There was a time before the time of judgment, an era forgotten by the ages, mentioned in a few verses, but feared for its shadow over creation. In the days of Jared, ancestor of Noah, something strange happened in the heavens, and it came to pass that, as men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and took wives for themselves from all whom they chose. The sons of God, the Watchers, powerful angels originally sent to watch over men, gazed with desire upon the daughters of the earth. Their leader, Semjaza, gathered the others on a plain near Mount Hermon, where they made an oath. They were 200 in all, and the decision was made with fear, for they knew that their choice would bring eternal consequences.
I'm afraid I'll be the only one to do this, and that you'll leave me to bear the blame alone,
said Semjaza hesitantly, but the others replied in unison.
Let us all swear and curse ourselves with a mutual oath so that we do not go back.
They came down. The ground shook as their feet touched the earth. The men looked at them in astonishment, for their forms were radiant, different from mortals. In a short time, they took wives, taught them heavenly secrets, and had children. But the children born from these unions were not ordinary men. They were creatures of extraordinary stature and strength, giants, beasts of flesh and spirit. They were the Nephilim. In those days, there were giants on the earth, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. These were the mighty men of old, the men of renown. These giants consumed everything around them. At first, they hunted and fed on the fruits of the earth. But soon, their hunger became insatiable. They turned against men, then against the animals themselves. Deformed creatures began to emerge, impure mixes between species. The Watchers began to teach secrets that were previously hidden. Azazel, one of the leaders, taught men to forge swords, shields, mirrors, jewelry, and face paintings. Women learned to seduce with enchantments and adornments. Other angels taught astronomy, astrology, magic, and the use of herbs for sorcery. The earth was contaminated, and God saw. Then the Lord said,
My spirit will not contend with man forever, for he is also flesh, yet his days will be 120 years.
In heaven, a judgmental silence fell among the faithful angels. The heavenly gates closed, and the archangels were alerted. The Watchers had broken the sacred order. On earth, men began to fear the creations of the angels. The Nephilim became lords of the tribes, gods among mortals. Their voices roared like thunder, and the mountains trembled under their feet. The blood flowed in rivers, and the corruption spread faster than the wind. Nature began to protest. The skies darkened. The birds migrated without direction. The ground exhaled a bitter odor. It was as if creation recognized that something was wrong. Something profound, spiritual, and fatal. And then God sent a message to a man, one who walked with him, one who did not bow before the giants nor the fallen angels. A prophet forgotten by the world, but known in the heaven. His name was Enoch. He emerged in silence amidst the chaos of cities dominated by the Nephilim and spoke.
You, sons of heaven, have left the highest heavens and defiled the earth. The Most High will judge you. The mountains will not hide your guilt, nor will the abyss shelter you. And there will be a day when the waters will cover everything.
The word of Enoch echoed among the valleys and mountains. Few listened, most mocked, but heaven was preparing. The armies of God would be summoned, and the watchers would be judged. For the time of divine patience was running out, and it was only the beginning. The plains that were once fertile were now marked by deep footprints and devastated fields. Where once vineyards and olive trees flourished, stone cities rose, built by the colossal arms of giants. The Nephilim, children of the fallen angels, ruled with tyranny. Their eyes glowed like embers. Their voices made hearts tremble. They were strong, beautiful, but filled with pride, violence, and a hunger for power. They took for themselves everything they wanted: men, women, animals, and lands. Wherever they went, they imposed reverence, for no one could resist their strength. Entire peoples began to worship them as deities. They built altars in their honor. They burned sacrifices, sang praises to names like Og, Arba, Anak, Gilgamesh. The memory of the Creator began to fade from the mouths of men. The Watchers, proud of their lineage, allowed the Nephilim to teach their own codes to the human tribes. War became common. The smaller tribes were enslaved. Violence was celebrated. Brutal tournaments among the giants became festivities. The city walls began to be erected with human skulls, and the skies were saddened. Men corrupted by this new system began to imitate the giants. Cruelty multiplied. Women taught by Tamil mastered spells. The men used bronze weapons and black swords forged by Azazel. It was as if the whole world had been enchanted. But the signs were everywhere. The sun seemed weaker. The seasons became unpredictable. The waters at times turned red. The cattle were getting sick. The trees dried up prematurely. Deformed animals appeared in the forests. Nature itself cried out.
And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth.
In the heavens, the faithful angels watched in silence. The throne of the Most High shone with justice. There was weeping among the celestials. A judgment was being prepared. But first, there would be a last attempt at reconciliation. One last message. While the Watchers celebrated in their stone palaces and the giants engaged in bloody duels through the mountains, a righteous man walked among the scorched fields, sowing words to the wind. Enoch, the seventh after Adam, continued his journey. The crowds avoided him. The kings despised him. But he did not cease to prophesy. In one of his visions, he was taken up to the heavens. There, he saw things that no man would dare to repeat, and upon returning, he recorded his warnings.
The mountains will shake, the stars will fall, the heavens will open, and the armies of the Lord will descend with glory. The giants will be judged, and the angels who begot them will be cast into the eternal abyss.
But didn't the Watchers laugh? They knew there was truth in his words. They feared the Most High. Desperate, they pleaded for Enoch to intercede for them. They brought him written words, asking for forgiveness. They wanted him to take their pleas to the Creator. Enoch, with sorrow, took the petitions. He was lifted up again, but the judgment had already been sealed. He returned with eyes full of tears and a heavy heart. He looked at the fallen angels and declared,
"You will not be granted peace. Your children, the Nephilim, will be destroyed. You will be witnesses to the ruin of everything you have created."
There was silence among the angels. For the first time, the Watchers knew fear. Meanwhile, on earth, the giants continued to build ever taller towers, believing they could reach the heavens. But wisdom had left them. Their bodies grew, but their souls rotted. They turned against each other. Fights among lineages of giants began to arise. Each one wished to be the absolute lord of the land. The cities fell, the valleys filled with blood. The human tribes, desperate, invoked any entity that promised them salvation. Deceptive spirits wandered among men, teaching lies and promoting the doom. The world was plunging into irreversible chaos. And it was in this scenario that a new character emerged in history. A simple man, not of giant stature, without human glory, but with a pure heart and eyes still turned to the heavens. His name was Noah. While the Nephilim warred among themselves and the cities crumbled under the weight of perversion, Noah walked with God. He was a righteous man in his generation. His hands worked the land, but his heart remained turned to the sky. Amidst the chaos, he cultivated silence, justice, and faith. Universal corruption had reached such a point that even the animals had been mixed. There were monsters among the hills. The pure lineage of men was about to disappear. But God found in Noah the last breath of fidelity and called him. One night, while Noah slept under the shelter of an old fig tree, a light descended like fire that does not burn. The glory of the Lord surrounded him, and he heard the voice.
The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is full of violence. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood.
Noah's face turned pale, but he didn't argue. He just nodded and began working. Meanwhile, in the heavens, the throne of the Almighty shone with radiant light. 4 archangels were gathered before God: Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel. Each had been given a mission. God's patience had run out. The earth cried out for justice. The souls of the innocent cried out from the dust. It was time for judgment. Michael received the order to act against the Watchers. Raphael was to capture Azazel and cast him into an abyss of darkness. Gabriel would be sent to incite war among the Nephilim, so they would destroy each other. Uriel would descend to announce the final judgment to the children of the earth. On earth, Enoch was lifted up again. In the heavens, he saw the halls of fire, and the rivers of light flowing from the throne of God. He saw the books open. He saw the names inscribed and those that were erased. A tear rolled down his eyes. He went down and delivered the final prophecy to the Watchers.
There will be no forgiveness for you. You will be cast into the depths. Your children will perish, and the earth will be cleansed. And a new beginning will arise from the destruction.
Azazel, the most wicked of the fallen angels, was the first to be judged. He had taught men to wage war, to create idols, to dishonor the body, and to manipulate creation. Raphael found him in the mountains of Judeo. With chains of fire, he bound him, dragged him over sharp stones to a dark abyss. And there he was cast, sealed in darkness, until the great day of judgment. Gabriel, in turn, visited the fortresses of the Nephilim. He sowed distrust among them. The giants began to accuse each other. Clans that were once united became enemies. The wars among the Watchers' own children intensified. It was the beginning of the end. Michael, the great prince of God's armies, confronted the Watchers, who were still hiding in caves and palaces. They were majestic in appearance, but now trembled before the presence of the servant of the Most High. One by one, they were chained and cast into deep caves. And upon these caves, burning stones were raised that would never be removed. While the sky waged war, Noah built. Day after day, the ark took shape. Its length was 300 cubits, its width 50, its height. It was a floating fortress built with faith and sweat. He didn't question, just obeyed. People mocked.
Noah, where is your God now? Why such a huge box? Are you planning to navigate in the desert?
But Noah didn't answer. He just continued. God then spoke again.
Enter you and all your family into the ark, for I have seen you righteous before me in this generation.
Animals began to arrive, 2 by 2, perfect pairs. Birds flew above and descended. Reptiles crawled in. The felines, the oxen, the deer, all obeyed a voice that was not heard with the ears. It was the command of the Creator. The clouds formed, the winds changed, the angels withdrew, the Watchers were sealed, the Nephilim at war. And then came the 7th day. Noah entered the ark with his wife, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. The door was closed, not by human hands, but by the hand of God. And silence took over. Dark clouds formed walls in the skies. Lightning tore the firmament with fury. Nature no longer whispered. Now it roared. The rivers began to overflow. The wind swept across the mountains. Creation, like a mother in labor pains, writhed in deep groans. The time of mercy had ended. Inside the ark, Noah prayed in silence. The wood creaked with the first thunder, but the peace on his face contrasted with the panic spreading outside. Outside, the men ran, sought refuge in the temples, called upon their stone gods. None responded. The door of the ark was sealed. Then the sound was heard, a rumble coming from the depths of the earth. The fountains of the great abyss burst open. On that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens opened. Water gushed violently from the depths of the ground. Liquid columns broke through cities. At the same time, from the skies, heavy rains fell like blades. They were not just drops. It was liquid judgment. The Nephilim, proud as they were, did not understand at first. Some laughed, others became annoyed. They climbed the hills, the tallest towers, trusting in their strength and stature. But the water did not respect height. It kept rising relentlessly. Gilgamesh, one of the greatest among the giants, roared against the sky.
O you who are in the heights, is this your revenge, your punishment for us having loved?
But the sky did not respond. Thunder was its only reply. Og, the colossus of the eastern mountains, tried to swim. His arms cut through the waters like paddles. But even he, with all his stature, did not find solid ground. A whirlpool swallowed him. The screams were terrifying. The humans cried out. The Nephilim roared. The Watchers, chained, heard from the depths of darkness the sounds of the destruction they caused. In his prisons, Azazel howled. His eyes, once full of pride, were now blinded by darkness. The silence of the abyss was broken only by the groans of the fallen angels, feeling the weight of their rebellion. Noah, inside the ark, felt the impacts of the waves against the hull, but his faith was firm. God was sailing with him. The rain continued for 40 days and 40 nights. The highest mountains were covered. No flesh survived. But the heavens also recorded every detail. In the celestial books, the names of the Nephilim were erased with fire. Heaven celebrated justice. The stars shone once again with intensity. The scale had been balanced. In the submerged world, all was silence. The earth had been washed with the tears of judgment. The ark floated over the abyss. The waters covered everything. It was as if the earth had been forgotten. But God remembered. The days passed. The wind blew. The waters began to recede slowly, and the ark rested on the mountains of Ararat. Noah released a raven, then a dove. The time of waiting had come to an end. From above, Noah looked out the window of the ark and saw a transformed world. Nothing remained of the empires of the Nephilim. No tower, no altar, no statue. The memory of the giants would be buried in the mud of history. But in spiritual realms, something was still stirring. Not all the echoes of the giants had been silenced. In obscure regions, remnants of the corrupted seed awaited a new opportunity. The earth would bloom again. But the shadows, they still lurked. The ground was still damp when the ark finally came to rest. The waters had receded, revealing a bare world, without cities, without cries, without corrupted altars. Noah opened the hatch and saw the clear horizon, as if creation had been reborn after a painful birth. The first thing he did upon touching the ground was to build an altar. No gold, no idol, just simple stones and grateful hearts. There he burned offerings of pure animals, and the aroma rose to the sky like incense of reconciliation. And the Lord smelled the pleasant fragrance and said in his heart,
I will never again curse the earth because of man, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth.
God then sealed a new covenant, a promise. The sky was adorned with colors never seen before, an arch that touched clouds and mountains. It was more than refracted light. It was an eternal reminder.
I will place my bow in the cloud, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth.
Noah and his sons began to work the land again. Ham, Shem, and Japheth learned to harvest, build shelters, and take care of the animals. Generations were born and multiplied. Entire peoples emerged from the sons of Noah. The languages mixed. The lands were distributed. The earth continued, now under the sign of the promise. But in the silence of the newly born land, echoes of the past still whispered. Among the descendants of Ham, ancient stories began to be heard, legends of giant men, tales of creatures with immense strength that somehow had survived the great destruction or returned through a tainted heritage. The scriptures do not say how, but they emerged again. Not with the same titanic splendor, but still impressive and threatening. Peoples like the Anakim, the Rephaim, the Emim, and the Zuzim began to occupy territories. Their bodies were larger, their shouts deeper, their swords heavy as the trunk of a tree. The lineage of the Nephilims seemed to have left traces, seeds mixed among men. Stories began to spread through generations.
In Bashan there is a king who sleeps in an iron bed 9 cubits long. In the land of Canaan live the children of Anak. They are said to be descendants of the ancient giants.
Their fortified cities reach the skies.
The reports arrived like rumors, but they repeated with frightening precision. The names changed, but the fear was the same. The echoes of rebellion returned to haunt the descendants of the righteous. God, however, had set apart a people that would come from Abram, a descendant of Shem, a people who would march through the promised land and face the giants of the past once again. But that was for future days. For now, Noah's sons were spreading. The sons of Ham went south, to Egypt, Canaan, Nimrod. The sons of Japheth multiplied in the northern lands, and Shem preserved among his descendants the lineage of the promise, a line that would walk for centuries until the name Messiah. Even so, the giants would rise again. One night, Noah was looking at the sky. His now wrinkled face still held serenity. Beside him, Shem approached carrying a cup of wine. His father looked at the stars and said,
They are back.
"No, you didn't understand."
Who, my father?
The great ones, in smaller flesh, but with the same spirit. The earth still moans.
Noah rose slowly and pointed to the sky.
But the promise is there. The rainbow, as long as it shines, there is still hope, even when the darkness returns.
And then he withdrew to his tent. Noah's days would end shortly after, but his legacy would remain. The memory of the flood would cross continents. Distant peoples would tell similar stories, from the Andes to the Himalayas, from the Hebrews to the Babylonians. All would speak of a flood and of giant beings that preceded the destruction. Noah died at 950 years old. He was buried among the mountains, far from the future lands of battle. His children continued the story, and the giants, even weakened, continued to roam the territories. They were like shadows without bodies, ancient whispers, ghosts of the Watchers' mistake. But one day, men would rise with courage. Men who would face the giants, not with the strength of the Nephilim, but with the faith of the prophets. And among them, a young shepherd would arise. Time passed like the breath of an ancient wind. Civilizations rose from the ashes left by the flood. Noah's sons multiplied, spread across the valleys and plains, and with them grew memories and fears. In the land of Canaan, stories circulated among the tribes. They whispered about men of enormous stature, about insurmountable walls, about cities where the very heavens seemed to rest on stone towers. Among the inhabitants of that land, there were names that bore the weight of ancient curses: Anakites, Rephates, Imim, Zamzumim, children of the shadows, descendants from forgotten times. It was in this scenario that the people of Israel marched, led by the mighty hand of God. Freed from Egypt under Moses' leadership, they crossed the desert with their eyes set on the promised land. But before taking possession, it was necessary to face them. The giants were waiting. When the 12 spies were sent by Moses to examine Canaan, 10 of them returned with hearts filled with fear.
The land is indeed good, but the men who inhabit it are of great stature. We saw the sons of Anak there, descendants of giants, and to our own eyes we seemed like grasshoppers.
The people wept. They were afraid. They wanted to return to Egypt. But 2 men rose against the fear, Joshua and Caleb.
Do not fear the people of this land, for we will devour them like bread. The Lord is with us. Do not fear them. Sesos Dios.
Words of faith echoed like thunder. The unbelieving generation would die in the desert, but the children of those who trusted would see the fall of the giants. And so it was fulfilled. Under Joshua's command, Israel crossed the Jordan, and soon the confrontation came. Cities like Hebron, Dibir, and Anab, strongholds of the Anakim, were taken. The giants fell by the sword of the faithful, but the most feared was yet to come. In the region of Bashan, Og reigned, the last of the Rephaim. His bed was made of iron, his body colossal. His name made kings tremble, but not Joshua.
Do not fear him, for I have delivered him into your hands.
And so Og fell. Bashan was taken. The altars were destroyed. The shadow of the past torn by the light of obedience. Still, it would not be the end. Among the Philistines, another name would arise, a name that would echo through the centuries. Goliath, the champion of Gath, a man almost 3 meters tall, gleaming armor, arrogance in his eyes. For 40 days, he challenged Israel before the valley of Elah.
Choose a man from among you to come against me. If he can fight with me and defeat me, we will be your servants. But if I defeat him, you will be ours.
Israel was silent. Not even Saul dared to face him. But then, from among the flocks, emerged a young man with a staff and 5 smooth stones in his bag. His name was David, small in the eyes of the army, but a giant before God. The battlefield was silent. On one side, Goliath, the champion of the Philistines, nearly 3 meters of arrogance, clad in bronze and scorn. On the other, a shepherd without armor, only with faith.
Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?
The giant mocked, spitting on the ground. But David did not retreat. His eyes did not see the armor, nor the size. His eyes saw the outrage against the Holy One of Israel.
You come to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Untosi oyo unyo kodupug.
The sky stopped. Even the angels fell silent. and the stone flew. A short whistle, a dry impact. Goliath fell. Like a tree rotted by pride, he fell face down on the ground. The ancient terror crumbled before faith. David ran to him, took his own sword, and with one blow severed his head. The ground trembled. The Philistine army fled in panic. The fear that men felt of the giants now turned against the giants themselves. But that was not the end. It was only the beginning of the final hunt. David would become king, a shepherd crowned with courage, and under his reign, the last generation of giants would fall. First came Ishbi-Benob, who tried to kill David in a battle. He carried a spear whose weight was 300 shekels of bronze, but was struck down by Abishai, son of Zeruiah. Then came Saph, another descendant of the Rephaim. He was killed by Sibbecai the Hushathite in another battle. Then Lahmi, brother of Goliath of Gath, who carried a spear with a shaft like a weaver's beam. He was defeated by Elhanan, son of Jare-Oregim. And finally, an anonymous giant, described as having 6 fingers on each hand and each foot, 24 in total. A monster in the eyes of men, but who fell like the others. David was no longer the boy of the valley, but faith still guided him. And wherever he marched, the lineage of the giants fell, as if the very sky were closing a cycle begun in the days of Noah. The warriors who killed the last of the Rephaim were not titans, nor sons of angels. They were ordinary men. But each of them carried something the giants never knew, the presence of the living God. And so, stone by stone, sword by sword, the profane lineage of the Nephilim, fragmented since the flood, was being eliminated. The cities of the giants crumbled. Their names became a warning, their deeds an even greater warning. And their souls, bodiless spirits, continued to wander, already defeated, merely awaiting the final judgment. And in the hearts of the faithful echoed a certainty. It is not strength that defeats giants, it is faith.